Hello everyone, my name is Robert. I want to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. It's called Real Talk with Robert. So for this video, I'm going to be interviewing a wonderful lady. Her name is Angel. She is a family law attorney for the past 3 years, and she will be sharing her experience as an attorney as to what it's like to be working in this field. What did it take for her to become an attorney, and what her passion was before actually she became an attorney. So without saying too much more, I will go ahead and let you guys watch her story. Again, I really do appreciate you watching my videos, and if you like it, if you find it interesting or entertaining, I would greatly appreciate if you click like, if you could share, if you could subscribe to my channel. This way I will bring you more stories for you in the future. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and begin. First of all, I would like to thank you, Angel, for sitting down with me today, willing to share your story about yourself and as to like what you do. It's something that really makes me happy, gets me excited to sit down and get to know somebody that I've never met before. And so maybe we could begin by you sharing about yourself, like who you are, where you're from, and then what do you do for a living?
Sure. Okay. So thank you so much for, having me. My name is Angel Jordan, and I am an attorney. I practice family law, so that's a myriad of different areas of having to do with like custody, child visitation rights. Sometimes it might be a divorce or parentage issues. Also includes domestic violence cases, which are sort of a field in and of itself. So that's what I do for, really it's my passion. I was going to say that's what I do for a living, but I do it for a living. It also happens to be my passion too, based in LA County. And I take cases from LA County to San Bernardino County, sometimes in Whittier. So I'm all over the place. But that's a little bit about me and what I do.
That sounds really exciting and interesting, actually. And so, how long have you been practicing law?
Sure. So this is my third year of practice. I'm still cutting my teeth on the gavel, I guess you could say.
Right.
And what have does that answer your question? 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. And where did you go to study and the law school and all that?
Sure. So I stayed home in
Okay.
California. I went to school in the Inland Empire. I'm a graduate of the Laverne School of Law. And I graduated in 2018, I think. It's been a while now.
That's interesting. Well, I got my degree in psychology in Laverne too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Another Leo in the room.
exactly.
Nice.
That was interesting.
We're
That's
all
another
over
thing.
the where. We're all over the place.
That's
awesome.
awesome. That's awesome. So, and what was the journey like to go through, the whole law school and everything? I'm sure it was challenging because I've met people who actually have gone through the process and they sort of dropped out. They just couldn't do it. They decided it wasn't the right thing for them. Like, what was the process like for you?
Whew. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that law school just, man. If you can make it through the first year, I think you push yourself for the rest. And I'm not your traditional student. I actually went to law school a little bit later. I was already working full time. By the time I went to law school, I had already been a graduate. I graduated from CSUN undergrad, and so I was already working full time. I had a family, and I was actually working full time and going to school part time at first. So that journey for me was fairly difficult because I had a lot going on during that time period. There were certainly times where I thought that I was going to just quit and drop out because it was just too much. But it really grew me. And I think it changed the way that I saw myself. It gave me a voice. It taught me how to command a room. I learned so much from law school. And that journey certainly was, it was a painful one, but it was worth it. It was worth the fight.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's something that I hear with a lot of people who say that they went through the whole journey, and even taking the bar exam and everything. It's challenging. And how was that process for you? The bar was also quite difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
man.
finishing the law school is one thing, but to actually pass it, to actually be able to practice law is a whole different, endeavor
Correct.
to try to go through. Yeah.
Correct. And I studied for the bar. I was working and studying for the bar. So there's never really been
Wow.
a time where I've just, been able to kind of focus on things outside of needing to provide for my family. It was a challenge for sure. And there were points where I just thought that I was going to give up.
Yeah.
I was so blessed to have well, first of all, I have several mentors, and mentors I think are just, they're golden. You gotta have them. Like they're like your angels in your back pocket. I love to have mentors of different ages. My mentors are. Some of my mentors are older than my other mentors. They're different ethnicities, different walks of life, and it really helps me to have perspective. But one of my mentors taught me that the bar wasn't just about your mind and keeping your mind fresh. I worked out during my bar. I had to eat a certain way during my bar exam. There were things that, like activities that I had to cut out while I focused on the bar. So the bar in and of itself was a journey for me. And again, it was another one that was a necessary journey, and it was tough, but you make it out. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Got to do it. It's a
Absolutely.
rites of passage, I'd say.
Exactly. I think it's the hard times that makes us stronger. We
Yeah,
grow in discomfort versus pure comfort.
sure.
And so, just like any other interview that I do, I would love to know more about your motivating factors that played a role in terms of making you say, okay, I want to go into law. How did that journey begin for you? Like that you say, you know what, I want to practice law. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you ask me that because my aunt, I actually came from a very musical family. My mother was an opera singer.
Oh, wow.
My aunt is a singer. She's a performer. She's one of the Supremes.
Is that
And
right? Wow.
she really she has this video of me when I was about 9, and my cousin and I were kind of fussing, and there was this point I guess there was another little girl in the room, and I told her on camera, when I grow up, I'm going to be a lawyer and then lock you away or something. I don't even remember saying that, but she brought this up many years ago, after I had just newly passed the bar, really, and she kind of brought it back to me because I thought I was going to be a music producer. I had gone to school for music. I still love music. I was classically trained to play piano. I thought that I was going to do something music oriented. And I actually ended up getting pregnant in law, not in law school, in undergrad. And that changed the trajectory of my whole life, really.
Yeah.
After I had my son, I had this passion for kids that just came out of nowhere. Somehow I just had this desire to want to protect them and care for them. And that for me is what really, I think, laid the foundation for what would be the basis for why I would end up going into family law so many years later. So it was in that pivotal moment that after I had my son and then I began to have a family of my own, I took some legal studies classes. Actually, I had really gone through a hard time in undergrad, and I thought at some point I was going to get kicked out of school. It was really bad. And in that experience, I remember I had a professor who suggested that I take an early morning class. And this early morning class was called Family and Legal Framework or something like that. And I took that course. Of course, it was very early in the morning, Most of the students, there was nobody there because who wants to get up that early in, college? You want to sleep in if you can a little bit. And that course just opened my eyes to the law and the legal system and family in a way that changed my thought process. And I took that class, I got an A in that class. And I remember my professor was telling me, have you ever thought about changing your major? And I was still a music industry major at the time. I said, well, no. And she told me that she felt that I had a true gift in this area. And so I went out on a limb, I changed my major, and the rest is history from there. So that's really what set the basis for me.
So you feel that you made the right choice from what it sounds like?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I can see that I was meant to do this. I was meant to do this. And it's my passion, really. Yeah.
That's really nice to hear that, because in some ways it's relatable to me in a sense, because I also majored in music in
Oh,
college. I took piano and musical composition and all that, and I wanted to
okay,
compose
cool.
music. And I said to myself, if I'm going to have a family, it's going to be difficult to do it with, being in a music career and being always away and potentially
Right.
being in a studio all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a difficult career to make money in. You,
Sure.
you either make it really big or you're poor,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
or
Yeah.
somewhere scraping, somewhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so I just said, I probably better change course and just keep
Right.
that as a hobby. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to hear that you were able to discover something else that you actually really enjoy doing, and then you got into it and you successfully completed it, and then here you are practicing law. And so I would like to learn more about the law side of it, and hear about, like, what type of cases do you work on the most, or have you worked on the most?
I would say that most of the cases that I have are long-term marriage cases.
Okay. What does that mean, by the way?
That's basically cases that where the parties have been married for 10 years or more. They tend to have accumulated quite a few things, debts, assets, children,
Okay.
building careers, things that they share, sometimes businesses. And those are the cases that I think are very challenging, I would say. I've always been the kind of person that just, I tend to bite off more than I can chew sometimes, I think. And then when I get in something and I'm like, okay, well, we gotta find our way to navigate through this. I've never really been I think I want to be the tiptoe in the water kind of girl, but that just hasn't been my life. And so I've learned how to kind of navigate in deep waters. And I would say sometimes with long-term marriages, they can be that way because there's just a lot of stuff to handle, a lot of stuff to divide, a lot of things to agree upon or that you disagree upon, and really trying to get the parties to come to a place of agreement. And that in itself can be a challenge. So that's part of what I do. And then I would say another one is just child custody in general. You don't have to be married. Sometimes you have
Yeah.
parties who aren't married, but they have children, and they're really trying to figure out the best schedule for their child. Each one thinks that they know
Right.
what the best schedule is.
Yeah.
Some of those motives are pure, and then others not so much. And so you have to come and try to find some reasonable ground there as well.
Interesting. What would you say is like the most difficult case you've ever worked on? What are the type of cases are generally very demanding on you as an attorney?
High conflict. I think a high conflict case where the parties are just not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah, and it doesn't
They're
matter what the dynamic is, like divorce or
right. I
just
mean, it's
whatever it
just
is.
it's just and sometimes you can tell by the length of the case history. Because when a case comes to you, you might have a case that's brand new. They're just starting. Someone's just starting to file, or they're thinking about filing, and they're asking you for some legal advice on how to proceed. Sometimes people are coming to you on the other end where they've already been to court before, and maybe they need to go back for some reason, and then they've got this long history of sort of back and forth and challenges that they've had with the other parent. And I would say that the high conflict cases are the ones that can certainly sap your energy.
Yeah.
And you've got to find ways in the very beginning, to understand what type of case you have, what have been the issues before with these parties, And you could be dealing with parents who obviously they're legal adults, but some of them act like children. And you have
I've
to,
heard about that
you know
before.
what I mean? They act like
Yeah.
children, and you kind of have to figure out a way to navigate through that and really help them to see what's best for their children. Because at the end of the day, family law, especially when children are involved, because obviously you have cases where they're not, but when children are involved, it's about the child. It's about the children. It's not about the mom. It's not about the dad. It's about what's in the best interest of the child. And sometimes there just requires so much getting the parent to really see that perspective, to make the choices that are in the best interest of the child and not necessarily what he wants or what she wants. And so those are the cases that I find are really challenging when you're having to walk the parents through changing their perspective on things.
So having said that, how long does it usually, on average, take cases take to resolve or complete or conclude?
Oh, it's so fact specific.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so
It could
fact
be,
specific.
what's
I
like the
mean,
shortest
so
time?
much of it really just depends on the parties involved.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I could have a case brand new, come in the door, just started, filed the case,
Yeah.
and within maybe 7 months, we've been able to come to a full resolution of the issues. And then you have cases where the parties are just not in agreement on anything.
Yeah.
And in those are the ones that sometimes they have to spend enough to be exhausted, and that's
Is that
another
right?
thing, is that
Wow.
sometimes people have to spend enough money to get to the place of exhaustion where they're really ready now to come to the table and settle, as opposed to trial. Now, trial can't be avoided. Sometimes you're just going to have a case and it's going to set you up for that road, but
Right.
if you can, you do your best to try to get the parties to see that there is an alternative.
Yeah, that sounds really complicated and stressful process for everyone involved, and you're in the mix of it too. And so you've worked on divorce cases too,
Yeah.
and you see those types of cases. Whenever like clients come and speak to you and say, okay, this we're trying to get a divorce and everything, do you get the do you get the explanation as to why people want a divorce? Do you see that side of it, or do you? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what are the common reasons that you see people get divorced over?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
So, in the listening, in the intake process,
yeah,
or when you're having your consultations with your potential clients, they will talk to you, about some of the things that led up to, and you have to learn to listen through the tears or to listen through the anger and to really kind of try to understand what happened here and how they ended up in your office. I just think generally the reasons why people might get divorced is one, they could have gotten married too early.
okay,
Okay, they just started too young before they knew themselves. And so now it's years in and they've learned a little bit more about themselves, and then they might find they don't like this person very much, or they're not happy with their setup. There's that. Then there's also other issues like finances or money management can be a big issue, while why people split up, because one might be geared more towards saving and the other is spending, or they're just not able to balance that. There's that. Then I just think overall there's compatibility. A lot of people don't take the time to really get to know each other before they jump into things. And marriage is not really, in my perspective, rather, marriage doesn't start, how do I say this? In today's world, I think the focus is on the wedding and the focus is on the bachelor party and the bachelorette party and
all the fun stuff,
right,
yeah,
all the fun
glamorous stuff, yeah,
stuff, right? But it really doesn't focus on what happens the next day when you're building your life with this
right. When
person,
the
when you're
honeymoon stage is
learning,
over,
right, when the fun is over and you're just living your life every day. Is this person even compatible with you? And so oftentimes people are coming because maybe they married on a high. They married within that blissful stage where
right,
everything was fun and exciting. And now some few years down the road and they realize they don't like each other very much, or they don't have much in common, and so they're at my door.
Yeah. Usually when they come to you and then they say, okay, we want to file divorce, do you think it's pretty much a done deal kind of thing? Or do they ever say, you know what, we've decided to not do that anymore, or like we've resolved our issues, or is it too late? You know, like, I don't know if you ever heard of it, but a lot of therapists say, by the time I get the married couples to the door and to sit down, you know, one leg is already out the door. And like, it's like
Yeah.
they're trying to like say, this is like the last step before we justify our reasoning behind wanting to get divorced or separate, whatever. So like when they come to you, is it pretty much done deal, like they're set on wanting to go through the process, or has it ever happened where you sit down, you talk to them, and they just sort of reconsidered it or something like that? Has that ever happened?
Well, it's usually not a we, it's usually one party or the other party.
Okay, okay.
In a divorce or situations that you're dealing with children, because obviously, there's conflicts of interest. You can't represent both,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
it's
it's one or the
one
other.
party that's going to come. But normally when that party comes, they're coming to you because they've already either tried everything, or
Okay.
maybe the therapist was already in the picture that just didn't work, and so by the time they get to you, they're usually at a place of really wanting to move forward, or they're looking to do it, and so they want the information to kind of get a gauge of what is going to happen next if they do. That being said, though, you do have situations where people reconcile.
Okay.
Sometimes they one person might file, the other person responds, they're in the middle of things, and then they decide they want to give it a second chance, and that can happen too.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and that's the better case scenario for them to try to avoid this process, because it's a long process, right? It takes like a whole 6 months, I think, for divorce to finalize and everything. Is that
Well,
the
that's
case?
the limit, not the limit. That's the minimum time
Oh, is that right?
that it
Okay.
takes for the court to say that you have met the requisite time to even enter a judgment. So
Okay.
it doesn't mean that you're going to get divorced in 6 months. It means that there is a 6 month waiting period before the court can even enter a judgment.
Oh, I see what you mean. So now that you have a perspective from the legal side,
Sure.
seeing how marriages to potentially end, and it could be really difficult and messy, has that shaped your opinion about marriage?
That's a good question. No,
Mm,
no. And here's why. It's because, well, I will say I was married once upon a time.
okay.
So I was a young mom. I was one of your kind of typical, got married very young,
Okay.
didn't really know what I was doing. Both of us just, we're good friends now, but
Yeah.
surely I can understand because I've lived it. And so I've walked in the shoes of someone who's going through a divorce, and I understand the ups and downs and the darkness of that. So I guess if anyone could come out jaded about marriage, and sort of have an axe to grind, through this profession, I could be that person. But the reason it hasn't changed for me is because I understand that marriage works with healthy communication. I think knowing who you are, one, you've got to know who you are. I would find it very difficult to have any successful marriage if you don't know you. Because if you don't know you, then you don't
Right.
know what works for you, and you don't know how you need to grow. And so there's that piece of it. And so I think for me, it's understanding that when you've got the parameters set in place, healthy communication, active listening, willingness to
Absolutely.
grow, being apologetic, having a perspective of change, those kind of things are the recipe for a healthy relationship. And so I keep that in the forefront of my perspective for marriage. That being said, I can also see how it can go bad.
Sure.
But it doesn't change my personal perspective on marriage. I think marriage is a beautiful thing.
Sure. Especially when you have a positive association with it, So,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or
correct.
you could reframe it. If it goes bad, you could say, well, just because I've been through one, it doesn't mean the subsequent marriage is going to be the same as the first one. Although statistically, second marriages fail even more so than the first.
Yeah.
So I could see why people could be quite discouraged
Sure.
to step in and get legally, into another marriage. And and that's the area that it really interests me, relationships, and I love talking about that. And I know this is probably an opinion-based question for you, but
Sure.
like in your opinion, because I tend to see a lot of people say, I don't believe in marriages anymore. I can't find anyone to want to commit. Everybody's just playing games. People are just all they want to do is just mess around and just,
Right.
we have social media now. We have dating
Oh gosh.
sites,
Right.
dating apps, and everything. And it seems like it's never easier to find someone that you could
True.
potentially find a life partnership with. But yet it seems to have complicated the matter for a lot of people
Right.
where it seems to
Gosh.
give sort of like a abundance mindset where, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of options. And
Mm.
now I don't know who to pick because as soon as I pick one, I'm
Right.
already worried, what if there's a better one waiting for me
Yeah, yeah.
in that app?
Yeah, right,
So,
exactly.
and there's a
Yeah.
lot of problems right now in terms of relationships. There's ghosting, and there's, people just sort of drop you with no explanation and everything.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about relationships in this modern world? How do you see it?
Oh
I know it's
gosh.
not a law question, but
Yeah.
it's really an opinion-based question based on your reality. What do you think?
Oh man. I
Yeah,
this is the wrong question
yeah,
for me.
because you got divorced and everything. How
I
has it been
did.
for you? Because single motherhood is very difficult.
Yeah,
How was
yeah.
that for you?
Gosh, I mean, my children are older now,
Okay,
and there
yeah,
was quite a bit of time that I focused most of my attention on my
on them.
children,
Yeah, yeah,
So I really didn't, I was out of the dating scene for a very long
yeah.
time. And then
Prioritizing
I
them.
was focused on my career and
Right.
really kind of building my passions around that. And so I just didn't have the time. I am not a fan
Of
of
the dating
this
world.
social
Yeah,
media
yeah, yeah, yeah.
age of things. I
Right.
I'm very old school. I
Yeah.
prefer communication and direct conversation. I prefer to meet someone at the grocery store. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Like somebody approaches you there.
Right. I
Yeah.
prefer that. And so my perspective on it is
Yeah.
very similar to what you said. I just think it's an overabundance and a plethora of different options. And there's
Right.
always like, well, I'll find someone new tomorrow. And
Yeah.
there's just this very plastic way that people date.
100%.
How do I navigate through that? I don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll happen when it happens.
Yeah.
I don't have an eagerness for that.
Sure.
I love the idea of a healthy marriage, and I don't think marriages are for everybody, but I
Right.
also don't think that
Sure.
everybody wants marriage. And so for those who do, the hope is that there is a enough people who share the same desire for marriage. And of course, you got to think about other factors that are involved in, singleness and metropolitan cities and, cities that are maybe, more like a country feel, more country based versus urban, like living here in LA and, how that impacts things. So there's so many different factors that go into dating. And I think for me, it's just, I don't spend a lot of time focusing on it. I focus on other things.
I could imagine, and I'm sure you're busy. Your work keeps you
Right.
busy. You have kids, so there's a lot to sort of juggle.
Sure.
And we've talked about, maybe off camera, we talked about stress and the challenge of working in the law. Um, how do you balance work life, personal life? The stress that you take from all these cases. In some ways you feel like a therapist when you're listening to these
Oh, yeah.
people's
Yeah.
stories, crying in front of you. You have to listen,
Yeah.
and
It's
you're
a
not
lot.
therapists. You may not know how to
Right.
sort of, and it's not your job to sort of give them a sense of
Correct.
comfort. But when you drive home and everything, you part of that is still with you. How do you like navigate the stress aspect of it and channel that away a little bit, where you could just sort of feel like, okay, I want to reduce all that and sort of dissociate a little bit from that.
It's not easy.
Mm.
It's not easy. And I can't say that I have a perfect formula for that. I think
Yes.
there are some days I do take it home with me.
Okay.
And I think there are some days that my children, I have children who are now young adults,
Mm-hmm.
and they keep me grounded. There are times that my family unit will pick up on my stresses, and will encourage me to find ways to kind of balance that. When you love what you do and when
Uh-huh.
you care about what you do, I
Right.
think it is inevitable that you're going to find yourself sometimes taking on those burdens. You're going to find yourself sometimes with some sleepless nights. And I'm okay with that sometimes because I do want my client to sleep at night.
I
And
see.
if there is a shift of energy, I would prefer to take it sometimes, even though it's not my life, so to speak, but I care, and I can look at it from an objective perspective because I don't have to live it every day. And
Right.
so I am okay with taking on that stress sometimes. I think how I balance is I meditate, I pray, I do the things that I find enjoyment doing. I still play. I still
Meaning
play
piano.
piano
Wow.
sometimes. Not good, but I clunk around.
But that still
In
makes you
remote
feel good.
memory, whatever's
Yeah.
left in there. It's like
Yeah.
riding a bike. There's some little things maybe I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
still clunk around a little bit, but I do that. I spend time with family.
Mm-hmm.
Family's very important. And I love music. Sometimes I will go out, I'll go dancing, I'll go find something to do to just kind of blow off the stress of the week. And that's really how I balance.
Well, that's nice. So that helps you sort of decompress and everything, and sort of refresh, I guess, right?
Recharge.
Recharge.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's needed because even a job that gives you a great deal of excitement and sense
correct.
of purpose and meaning, but
Yeah,
yet you burn out. There's
yeah,
a certain amount of self-care that needs to be taken care of, so that you could be
yes.
your best potentially for your clients. So that's something that was interesting for me to know how you do that. And I want to kind of go back to the legal part of it,
Sure.
as far as, like, if somebody's sitting out there listening to you and is not in a good place, unfortunately, in their life, whether if it's marriage issues, whatever, and they are really at a cusp of wanting to initiate a legal process, but they don't know who to talk to and which lawyer or which firm to go to. How do people navigate and figure out who they hire? I mean, besides potentially you, but how does one decide and choose a good attorney to represent themselves?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think first it's really kind of understanding. Well, first I think consultations are really important,
Okay.
and you can learn a lot from how people communicate with you. And what I mean by that is if you're calling someplace and they're really short with you,
I see.
they don't seem to really have time.
Okay.
It's just about whether you can afford it or not. I mean, now at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
it might be that that particular attorney is too, their hourly rate might be too much, or
Okay.
something like that. But I think you can get a feel of, do they stop long enough to hear you? That's important. It's understanding, because that is what you're going to encounter, right? Attorneys have the ability to set the tone for somewhat, set the tone, I hope, for the work environment. So when you go and you have your consultations, or even if it's in person, even better, right? Because you might get a feel for the firm environment. But if you don't, and you're just having a phone conversation, you can pick up on some things there. It's understanding what your needs are before you even get on the phone, so that you can ask that attorney specific questions. Well, this is my issue, or these are the things that are very important to me. Have you ever dealt with a case like that? And you
Okay.
can ask the attorney so that you can get their perspective on what they might say. I think that's important. Um, I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure.
Sure, that
Was there?
helps. Yeah, and you mentioned about consultation. Is that usually a free consultation?
It can be.
Yeah, okay.
my
Yeah,
my firm does offer
okay.
the initial, free consultation, and
Okay.
it really is a way for us to kind of get background information on the case. It's a way for me to know, do I want to proceed with this case? Do I have the bandwidth to proceed with this case?
Okay.
I might have a caseload where there's we're already set for trial on a couple of cases, taking a lot of my energy. I might
Okay.
not be able to take on another case that's I'm taking at the trial phase. But for instance, if maybe the person is just starting out, then I know I have some time. You know what I mean? I might be able to take on a case like that. It really just depends on the case
Mm-hmm.
and the amount of time that it's going to require. So I think consultations are a good way. And of course, I want to discourage, calling, around every place. But I think doing a little bit of research and
Okay.
maybe finding out what this firm is about, what kind of background do they have, are they exclusively practicing in the area of your need?
Okay.
Or are they stretched in a lot of different areas?
How do you feel about that? If somebody's overstretched or stretched in a lot of areas, do you think that's a bad thing, good thing? What is your experience?
Well, I mean, my thoughts are really about longevity. If you
Hmm.
are a well-seasoned attorney and surely maybe you've been doing this 15, 20 years,
Okay.
you might have the experience to know all kinds of different fields of law
Okay.
by that time. But certainly, if you are someone like me who's maybe within your first 5, 6 years of practice,
Okay.
I I think it's good to have a niche field. I think it's good to have something that
Hmm.
you focus on.
Okay.
My clients, potential clients who come to me, know that my focus is family law, and
Okay.
that's my passion area. So my attention is there. And
Okay.
I think that that is important to, have somebody, if you have a family law matter, you want someone who's focused on family law. But again, if it's someone who's got a lot of experience, they've been doing it for a very long time, they might be able to do 2 and 3 different crossover fields. Perhaps maybe
Yeah.
they're in family law and probate and domestic, criminal law, because
Right.
you can have a family law matter that branches out to different things. You could have a family law matter, and then let's say, unfortunately, the parties got into a fight,
Hmm.
and now it's turned into something criminal, right?
Okay.
So now the criminal element has come in, or it could possibly be that someone has died, and now the probate or estate has developed. So you might have someone you're of a benefit if they have this knowledge in different areas. So hopefully that answers
Sure.
that
That
question.
was very helpful. Yes. If you could advise those that are right now watching and thinking about actually going into the law and all that, what wisdom can you teach them or share that they should know that you didn't know, you wish somebody could have told you, even though you've had good mentors and all that? Um, what advice can you give someone? Because sometimes people jump in and they say, "Oh, I wish I knew this. I wish I knew that." Is there anything that you could share that people should know before going into law?
Well, I think you mentioned mentors, and that's key. I
Hmm.
think mentors are key, and you can have that at any stage of your legal career.
Okay.
You're never too old for mentors, and you're never too young to start seeking people who are doing what you aspire to do. So I think every young attorney should certainly be looking at who they look up to and where they can glean wisdom. That's important. So I would say that is one of them. I think another one is always be hungry to learn
Okay.
more. Store your brain. Law school teaches you to dump so much information. And for me, it changed my sleeping patterns. Like, I
Is that
don't
right?
think I'll ever go back
Is that
to
right?
yeah, for
How did it
sure.
change?
No, because you're just up more. You're just up
Wow.
more. Like And I don't think I'm the only attorney who deals with this. Like,
Okay.
you're just up more. And there are certain things, like, I think maybe if you're prepping before a hearing and it's a pretty substantial one, you're going to be up. You're probably going to be up the night before. You're going to be nervous a little bit, thinking about your arguments and things like that. So it changes your patterns. It changes, the amount of sleep I think you need. You learn, at least I did, I learned to work off less hours of sleep.
Wow.
But I I think educating and staying focused on learning new things is important. And then I think the last one is being comfortable making mistakes. And that's a hard one.
And what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of making mistake in your practice?
Yeah.
What could mistake cause in a case?
Well, gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, it just depends.
Yeah.
You miss an important deadline, that's a pretty big mistake. It
I
could
see.
be. And I've not done that, and I don't ever want to do that. But
Yeah.
you know
Is
what I
that one
mean?
of your fears
I
in
mean,
your
it could
job?
it could
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
If you miss a deadline, not only do you have to deal with your client, but there are legal ramifications when you miss certain deadlines, sanctions,
Is that
and
right?
this and that and the other. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So
That could put a
missing
lot of
deadlines,
pressure on
that's
you.
not the mistake you want to make. But I
Yeah.
think when I say make mistakes, perhaps what I mean is it's okay to do something one way and find later on that there was a better way. And not beating yourself up for not having known that there could have been a better way or a faster way, a more efficient way to do something. It's giving yourself space to improve. And I think that's important for a new attorney for sure, because you I don't think law school, it's so heavy competition driven.
Is it?
And when you take the bar, you want to pass it on the first time.
Sure.
There isn't really room for the failure of it. You know what I mean? And it takes a lot to accept that maybe you did fail it and you have to try again. And every case you get, you're not going to win every case. And you're not going to walk away. Sometimes when you go to a hearing, you might come in with really good argument, but the judge will rule against your client. And you have to be able to eat that and learn from that and pick yourself up and learn. Maybe you learn something that's going to help the next client you have, in a way that perhaps didn't help the client that you were with that day. So it's being able to take your wins and your losses. So that's what I would say are the three really important things. Take your wins and your losses, be okay with that.
Okay.
Find mentors early on and educate yourself, and be thirsty to educate yourself.
And that's very important advice, and recommendation. And another thing that I'm curious about is, like, do you have to take exams, or, like, how do you, like, stay updated into making sure that you're aware of all the most current laws and everything?
Sure.
What are the requirements about that?
So you have to take MCLEs, which is continuing legal education,
Okay.
and the state bar requires a certain amount of hours that you have to do every
Okay.
reporting period, and so
Okay.
that's how you stay knowledgeable, is to make sure that you're meeting those requirements, and you don't stop there.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says you have to stop at the limit. Sometimes it's a lot to pack in what's required, but if you can and you find something of interest, you take it. You take the course. You go to the conference. You sit in on an event, something like that, and just keep yourself in a place of learning.
And if you don't do that, is there a negative consequence in your license, or
Oh yeah,
it'll?
yeah. You
Okay.
can not be able to practice.
Gotcha.
You can
Okay.
get suspended or fines or something like that.
Got it. Okay. And I know that our time is getting kind of close, so, but I do want to kind of maybe ask you maybe a couple more things if we could squeeze it in. Is like, what are you most grateful about in life? Like where
In
you are today?
life,
Yeah,
in life,
yeah,
what am I most grateful about in life?
yeah,
Life. It just really seems really simple. But breathing
hmm,
and waking up. I
yeah,
know it seems simple, but it's understanding that somebody didn't, you know. And I lost my mother 2 years ago, and my mother died the year I passed the bar.
oh wow,
And I was, in retrospect, so grateful that she had the opportunity. My father passed 10 years before her, and so he was already gone, but I was so grateful that she had the opportunity to experience that with me because she had put so much in. So many nights I was
hmm,
like, I'm quitting. I can't do this. And
oh
this is
really?
too hard. I'm
Yeah,
crazy thinking I could do this. Who does this with children and a full-time job? Something's wrong with me, to
hmm,
have these delusions of grandeur that I could do this. No.
yeah,
And she kept me grounded. And I say that to say she's not physically here.
yeah,
Even though I believe her presence and her energy lives in me, she's
yes,
not physically here. And so life is important. Life is what I'm grateful for, the ability to wake up and do what I love. That doesn't mean that every day is like roses, but it does mean I understand the joy and gift of life. And that's what I'm most grateful for is the ability to get up and do it again.
I like that you said it that way, and I'm sorry that you lost your mom. It's, I would say it's one of the hardest things to deal with. You know, grieving loss of a person who gave you the gift of life
Yeah.
is quite difficult because I experienced mine too. You know, my father passed on like this past March,
Oh,
and it put it
really?
to
I'm so sorry.
perspective. And I think about it that way. I'm like, well, every day is a gift because those who no longer have that,
Yeah, yeah.
they could give anything just to come back, just one more day, even.
Right, right.
You
And
know,
what would we give?
yeah,
What would
exactly,
we give? I mean, I,
yeah,
I, I was thinking about that the other day, and I've been blessed.
yeah,
I am blessed to have nice things. I am
yeah, yeah,
blessed to have love
hmm,
and provision in my life. But I was thinking to myself, what would I give? Oh man, what would I give? What would
yeah,
I give for one more conversation? What would I give
hmm,
for a scent, just a hug, just
right,
you're doing such a good job. So many things that I've even accomplished since her passing that perhaps I wouldn't have
yeah,
gone for had she been here. I
right,
think there was a push in me when
hmm,
she died that was just like she kind of because my mother was such a vibrant
oh really,
personality and my mother started a domestic violence and substance abuse counseling center all
okay,
on her own, still
wow,
operating today. And
wow,
she did this, and I never thought that I would be practicing on my own.
hmm,
It takes so much to be your own boss. It's not just about the autonomy, but I mean it's a business, and there's so much that goes into the work of that, and doing it successfully, and maybe not doing it so successfully, and thinking
hmm,
about ways you need to do better, and this person who's got this advice, and this person tells you to go to this conference, and there's just all this stuff that you have to learn to do, and so my mother, she had her own business and she worked that thing. And that woman, she was amazing. And it's like she just endowed me somehow with this energy to do this. And I say that to say, what would I give for a moment to just tell her, this is what I've done. This is how I've used what you taught me.
yeah,
So I think life is beautiful and it is a gift from God, and you cannot waste it.
I agree with you. Especially, yeah, health is one of the most important things that we have that we tend to not be consciously aware of
Sure,
in terms of it being so valuable and important
sure.
because we spend so much time chasing the money and trying to earn and trying to build
Right.
something in our life, and we could sometimes forget about the most important things that are very abundant, and not necessarily tied to money. And I try to keep that in my conscious awareness at all times, to be very humble and be thankful and everything. Sometimes life doesn't always feel like it's going the right direction, or whatever, but just to be able to wake up and say, "Wow, thank God, I'm getting another chance," is a good way to look at it, and that's nice that you have that sense of perspective. So, and I feel like I could talk to you all day here and ask millions of questions. And is there anything that you want to add that we haven't quite touched upon, or anything about life or law or anything that you would love to maybe just add into the story?
I guess, and I'll just kind of end on this. I think it's life, it's like it's like a blanket,
Hmm.
a quilt of different strands that your experiences, yes, I'm a family law attorney today, but my life prepared me for this, what I'm doing. And there were tears. There's a broken marriage in the middle
Yeah.
of this. There's, getting pregnant at a very young age
Right.
in the middle of this. Just coming, experiencing what it is to be a legal adult, and now I'm a parent in the middle of all that. There's, losing parents, and build the kind of learning how to process that. There's aspirations perhaps for different, like I said, I was a music major
Right.
and I shifted. So even that was like a dream at the time that failed, and I sort of pivoted to something else. There's this, there's loss of jobs and new jobs and all of this stuff that's kind of pulled into this blanket of experience. And that is what shapes you.
Right.
That is what
It builds character.
builds in you the
Right.
fortitude, the character, the focus, the resilience. It's that. And I also have to say, I'm a person of faith. So I pray, and a lot of my success, I think, comes
Hmm.
from that. And not everybody believes as I do, and so you've got to
Sure.
find where your source comes from.
Exactly.
But for me, prayer is important, and that tied into understanding how the stories of your life kind of come together in a way. And so I would just encourage somebody who maybe, listening to this, I don't know what, it could be the day, it could be years from now that this is
Right.
playing, right? But it's knowing that it's all part of the process.
Right.
So many people want the gold, but they don't want the process.
Yes.
The process is ugly.
Yeah.
The process is uncomfortable.
Yes.
The process is nerve-wracking. It's makes you cry. Who wants the process, right? But it's the process that qualifies you. It's the process that makes you. So that is what I hope that someone can take away from this. And that's it. That's it for me.
And that was great. And I'm glad that I asked you that question because I think you really brought out what I wanted to hear. I was hoping to hear is for people to hear that, sometimes in life things go in a way that you don't expect and you get disappointed and you sometimes could easily just give up and say, you know what, I'm just not a lucky person. It's meant for me to be failing, or whether if it's relationships or jobs, career, instead of beating yourself up, you could say, you know what, maybe I could use that as a motivation to overcome, let these challenges teach me something and build to be a stronger person and somebody that doesn't give up. And I love the fact that you are one of the stories out there that went through all kinds of things, and I'm sure more things that we even discussed, but you overcame, and here you are. You're well spoken, you're intelligent, you're successful, and I would love for at least one person to hear this and say, wow, you know what? If Angel could do it, I could do it. And that's really my purpose of doing these stories, is to tell people there is always way out. If
Yes.
you believe in it and believe in that source of power, and sometimes whether if that even comes from your parents or whoever is that person that gives you also a pillar of strength and hope, integrity, and whatever you want to call these words, there is always a way to accomplish what you want to accomplish, even if you have to fall so many times.
Yes.
And sometimes I think you're set up to be more appreciative at the
Correct.
end when you
Correct.
actually have to get something through pain and suffering, versus you turn 18,
It's handed
suddenly your
to
dad
you.
gives you here's the key to your Tesla,
Right.
go enjoy your life.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to earn your
Yeah, yeah.
stuff to really appreciate it. And so with that note, would you like to let who's watching know where to find you if they need you for potential legal service or consultation?
Sure.
Yeah, and you could even,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So, anyone who's watching this, if you are in a family law, you've got a situation, you have some questions, perhaps you're thinking about getting a divorce, or perhaps you've got children and you really want to find a parenting plan that's going to work for you and the other parent. You're interested about some things that you can think about that is in the best interest of your child, or perhaps you are on the heels of getting married. You're about to get married and you just want to know if the best way to have something that protects you and your spouse in the future. You are welcome to call. You can call the office. The office number is 818-456-4203, or you can log on to www.ajordanlaw.com, and you can set up a calendar appointment there. If you need to, for whatever reason, we have emergencies where you can contact me. I try not to give this out, but if you're a client or future client and you need to, 818-456-0148. And that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Angel. I really appreciate you sitting down and talking to me today. And I enjoyed talking to you and learning about you. And maybe in the future, if you're interested in sharing more stories and more wisdom and everything, I'll be more than happy to come back and sit down and talk to you and further our story here that you shared.
Yes, and if anyone has any specific questions, you can also find me on Instagram, attorney_AJJ. Facebook is the same, attorney_AJJ, and you can find me there as well.
Yeah, and that's another way to do it. And then for those who are going to be watching this, you could even put your comments in the video. Maybe you could put a feedback there. I'm sure me and Angel will be able to see it. Maybe we could comment on that. You could go on Real Talk with Robert on YouTube, and I would appreciate it if you could watch it and share your thoughts. Click like, subscribe, and everything. I would greatly appreciate that. And again, thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Angel. We'll see you next time.
All right, sounds good.